Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Spence here at Core 4x4, back in the studio with the red LJ. This is video 2 of the series that we're gonna be doing on this. If you missed the last video where we put the aluminum Genrite fender flares on, go check it out. It was an awesome video. Cannot tell you how excited I am to be back in the studio, getting ready to do suspension parts. We're gonna do probably a few videos on the lift kit we're doing today. We're gonna be installing a 3.5-inch lift kit. And eventually we're gonna do 35-inch tires with beadlocks. For today, we're gonna get into the lift kit and we're gonna get into teardown. Before I go over to the table to show you guys the kit, we're doing vehicle-specific merch when we're doing these series like this, and we'll be giving away 5 shirts per video. And we're probably doing 4 or 5 videos on this. So we're gonna give away 20 or 30 shirts on this. To the best comments, make me laugh, tell me what I did wrong, tell me what you've done to your LJ. I just wanna hear about it. I love talking to you guys about these builds, but that's enough talk for now. Let's get over to the table, talk about the kit, and then we'll get into teardown. I have a pile of tires and rims. These are the beadlocks that our friend picked out. This is his Jeep. That's gonna be the last video when we get this thing lifted. It already looks good with the flares, but this is actually factory height with a slightly bigger, more aggressive tire and a good looking wheel. But all that's coming off, and we're gonna be doing our Camp Series 3.5-inch lift kit for the TJ and LJ. Now I'm gonna set up a shot and we'll go over all the parts that are included, but all of this is gonna go on that. Okay, this is our Camp Series 3.5-inch lift kit for the TJ and LJ models from 97 to 06. So we got the Fox shocks, front and rear here, our Camp Series 10-piece kits. We got front and rear control arms, as well as front and rear track bars. We got our Rock Crawler 3.5-inch front coils, our Rock Crawler 3.5-inch rear coils, our bump stop kit, front and rear, a rear track bar, relocation bracket, extended brake lines, and the front and rear end links. We went with the Camp Series because this is a daily driver. He does off-road it a lot. It's the perfect all-around series for comfort, flexibility, ride quality, all of that. Camp Series is great. If you like to get a little more aggressive off-road, I would recommend the Crawl Series. The Crawl kit just comes with our Crawl control arms and our Crawl track bar, front and rear, which just means it has Johnny joints at both ends of the parts for increased articulation. Let's get this Jeep in the air and start ripping parts off. All right, before I get too far, I'm gonna get all the wheels off. She's up in the air. There's very little rust, and I mentioned that in our first video. This is a very clean LJ. Anytime you're working on one of these old Jeeps and you're gonna be taking everything off, especially suspension, this right here is your best friend. We use Freol. You can use any sort of penetrating fluid. Take the extra second and spray all your bolts. It can save you from cutting nuts, cutting bolts. I'm gonna go to lunch before I start tearing things off and just let it sit, do its magic, and you're not gonna regret it. All right, already got that off. Track bar's coming off. Where's the track bar? Steering. This is coming off. We'll have to clean up our brakes, get a little overspray, but spraying everything here, even on a clean Jeep like this, is not gonna hurt us. Oh, track bar. That guy's rusty. Penetrating fluid's on, and I'll be back and we're gonna tear this thing apart. Okay guys, back from lunch. The penetrating fluid has been doing its job. I'm ready for teardown. Now, if you have any questions about taking parts off a Jeep, comment down below. We're always here to help. We're just gonna be unbolting everything. I'll get the jack stands, I'll support the axles, because we're gonna be starting fresh with all our new components. We'll see how long it takes, and hopefully we don't run into any stuck bolts. For now, let's start taking parts off. Let's get some jack stands. The lower control arm is 13/16 on nut and bolt. Upper control arms is a 15. Set of the end links is also 15 mil. 18? Yep, 18 and 15. We're gonna save all the factory end link hardware. Brake line attachment is 13 mil. Rear track bar frame side, 15 and 18. A lot of 15 and 18 on the rear. The shock is an 18 on the lower end. Shock's upper bolts are 13. I didn't spray these. Leave those bolts up in there. Okay. And all we got left for the rear end is this track bar. T55 for the rear track bar on the axle side. Upper front control arms are 15 mil. Okay, I was a little nervous that that bolt was rusted. Okay, we took off this shock in the fender flare video, and we got the top half of this shock as well. 13 mil on the bottom. Top of the sway bar looks like 15. Yeah, 15. You're gonna wanna undo this first while it has pressure on it. Yep, T55, and I bet you an 18 mil on the other side. We got Big Bertha now. Got track bar and coils. The track bar is also 15. I think that's a 19. Let's see. Yeah, 19. I'll leave that castle on, have something to try to hit against. Oh, that was way easy. I was expecting to struggle with that. We're gonna be careful. These axles are hanging. 13. Nope, maybe a 15. The upper bump stop cup is a 15. I'm gonna leave that on for now. Okay guys, that wraps it up for teardown. That was pretty fast. It does help that this Jeep is the cleanest of the older models that I've ever worked on. Very little rust. We use Freol on everything, maybe 2.5, 3 hours total, and we have it all the way down. We got the arms off, track bars off, shocks off. We're not changing the steering. We are leaving the brake lines until we do the extended brake lines because I didn't want to have that mess. There's no reason to take them off early because all of the fluid is going to just drain or drip and just make a mess. When we get to the brake lines, I should put Freol on these guys. If you've ever done brake lines on these old Jeeps, these little fittings can be very tedious. And there's a couple things like this bump stop pad we need to take off and the rear bump stops. My first Jeep, this guy got stripped so bad and it was a pain. There's a little corrosion on these, but Freol is your friend. Now we're gonna start putting the rear end together. I haven't taken the bump stops here out. We're gonna start with the rear bump stops because the rear bump stops actually hold the new coils in place. Then we'll probably move on to the extended brake line and then start putting the arms and the shocks and everything else in place. You are gonna need a coarse thread 1/2 inch tap, so 1/2 inch by 13, and a 7/16 drill bit. So I got those here because we do have to put a new hole in the factory bump pad here. So we're gonna drill on center, tap it, and then we're gonna get the springs and the bump stops installed, and then we'll move on to everything else. These are the new rear bump stops. This is our upper piece, and I made the mistake of putting the soft piece in the holder before I put it inside the coil. So don't make that mistake. This will hold the top of our coil in place, so we'll actually bolt this up inside the coil. So we'll probably have to jack the Jeep up a little more. But before we do that, I wanna get the bottom section all ready to go because once the coil's here in our way, we're gonna have less room to drill and tap. So I'm basically gonna mark out center. We'll start with a small drill bit so we're not wandering too much, but we're just gonna drill a hole center to 7/16. We'll tap it out and we'll be able to bolt the bottom plate in with the coil as well. But this will actually hold our rear coils in place. Awesome setup for the TJ because they have such squatty rear coils. You're not gonna slip out or lose a coil when you're flexing out. Just gonna pick a little guy. This is just a pilot bit to keep us centered. That looks pretty dang good. Dude, I was just eyeballing that. We're pretty much dead on. All right, if you have like a tap set and you have the tool, I would recommend that. If you're good at tapping things with the drill bit, put it on your lowest setting, get it nice and straight. This is a taper tap, so this is gonna help us get in, but we're gonna walk it in and we'll walk it out. So we're gonna put some pressure so it'll cut the threads, and we're gonna make sure we're as straight as we can be. This is only like 3/16 plate, so it's not gonna put a lot of threads into this, but let's go. All right, this drill is not grabbing on, so I am gonna get the socket. Okay, it's a coarse one, so the drill's not working. I got it a 9mm, and that's not, it's a 6-sided. Okay, 9mm slipping. Okay, I got an 11/32, and I just ground the corners a little bit on this 1/2 inch, very snug. Hopefully we can get that out. Now it shouldn't slip. You only got one shot at this until you're like welding a nut or going with a bigger bolt. So make sure you put straight, even pressure. Make sure you're cutting those threads. The taper tap is nice because it's easier to line up. There we go. Looks like we got it. There we go. Oh, drop that. And this is where it gets tricky, and we for sure need to go up. I gotta be careful though, because there's nothing besides drive lines and brake lines holding this axle and the jack stands. Still not quite tall enough. This is why I needed the bump stop thing off. I gotta slide this up, then we can put it together inside, but I could not get it together with this thing installed. Okay, put our bolt through there. Let me go up a little more. There we go. I need to get my Allen. There we go. He said this might be easier with the buddy. I gotta somehow get this started. There we go. I think we got it. Did I get it started? I think I got it. Oh yeah, okay. So because we're so drooped, our axle angle is gonna be a little weird. So we're just gonna get this started, and then we'll definitely tighten it up when we get some weight on both sides. But let's get close. Okay, get this guy started too. Okay, I might need to go down a little bit. There we go. Not bad. Since I know I'm gonna need the weight down on this to tighten, I'm gonna go knock out the driver's side. So let's get that done. We'll put a little weight on the coils. Obviously not a lot because nothing is attached. But once we get these in, we can start getting some arms and stuff on. Let's get the other side done. Not bad, those threads. I don't know if you can see it. We got like a 1.5 threads in there. A little cockeyed. Oh, we gotta get this guy out. Okay, got that drilled and tapped. Should have a buddy for this one. Oh, balls, don't fall, don't fall. Okay. Finally got both sides in. This is very thin sheet metal. We have like a 1.5 threads in there. So we are not going tight by any means. We're just gonna snug this down. The last thing I wanna do is try to fish a nut up in there. Oh, we could probably get a nut on this side. You could if you had to. I have my finger on the bottom of the thread so I can feel it still coming through. That's about as tight as I feel comfortable. That was a 19mm socket on that. And then I don't know what size my Allen is. It's a 5/16 Allen. I don't have like a driver bit to tighten this. I'm gonna put a little weight on this because this one's not all the way up. Now that we have both sides in, let it down. There you go, see how that's loose now? Yeah, it was pulling down. This may be something we can't really tighten all the way until it's settled or until we're at ride height. So we'll get this as tight as we can, but we do want the spring to flatten out. That's tight, let's get the other side. Again, not too tight on this. You strip it, you're gonna be fishing a nut up on the back side. Make sure your springs are centered before you tighten this up. All right, bump stops and coils are installed. The other thing I'm gonna install is the Trackbar relocation bracket for the rear track bar. Now, with this lift, it is highly recommended to get the slip yoke eliminator. This is a Rubicon, so it already has it, so we don't have to worry about that. What that does is that allows us to point the pinion straight in line with the drive line at ride height. This reduces driveline vibrations, noise, wear and tear. The TJ, LJ, they are notorious for these short, stubby rear drive lines. So when you lift it and you don't adjust your pinion, you're gonna be losing your slip yoke. It'll just slide right out, cause driveline vibrations, because typically on a driveline you want your U-joints parallel. You're running at the same angle as your top one, so they wear the same and they function the same. But because the TJ, LJ drivelines are so short, you typically have to run them at different angles, or you're just gonna lose your slip yoke at anything over 3 inches of lift. So we're gonna do the relocation bracket. It does require a little finesse, and we are gonna remove this bracket. I should have probably done it before the coil was in, but we're here now, so We're gonna do it now. I'm just gonna pop this cover off. This bracket is a pretty simple install. It literally just bolts over your existing bracket and changes the angle to go from straight to more in line. This allows us to rotate the whole axle this way, and then everything lines up. That bracket right there on the other side, that is our other end. When we get it right height and we adjust our arms and our pinion, everything is going to line up and this is going to come back over. We are going to open up this top hole and we will drill a new bottom hole. The most important hole is our mount hole that we need this to line up with. So we're going to get that bolted in and then we'll run the drill bit through. So the kit does come with a bolt and a crush sleeve, but we want our bolt to line up and go through. 19 mil on the socket. We're going to get this bolted with this crush sleeve. This crush sleeve goes inside your factory bracket. It keeps everything from collapsing and crushing. So make sure you're using this and it bolts all the way through. Because we're drilling and we have the arm out, I'm gonna run the bolt backwards and stick out the rear end. If we want to trim it out here, we will, but I don't want to have it in the way of my drilling. I think normally you do it the other way, but we have the arm out, we're gonna do it this way. So I got the crush sleeve in. Oh, I forgot to put the washer on the bolt. Don't go through the grate. This might give us some interference issues with the gas tank, and we don't want that. So we will trim that down if we have to. Okay, now this is just a 5/16 drill bit. There is an existing hole here, and it's not always gonna line up. And then over here, for simplicity, we're gonna just drill through the existing bracket and we can mount this. It is slotted, so we're gonna just shoot for the middle here. Easy peasy. Now this is the hardware that comes in the kit. This is where you need small hands. The washer back here. We got our lock nut. Okay guys, 13 mil on the socket and wrench. Whoo-wee. Okay, this is the bracket all installed. You can see that crush sleeve in there. It is all ready for our new track bar. I think next, we're gonna do the rear brake line. Pop this brake line off. So let's get that done. This looks like a T30. And actually before that, I'm gonna break this loose. Thank you, free all. We're gonna make a mess here. Okay. Okay. Hurry and thread this on a little bit so we're not leaking too much. And then we're gonna put the old block, just hook it up here, or not the old block, the new block. $14 on the breather hose. Okay, now that we're finally dripping out, I'm gonna need to add some fluid. There is a little bit of a rounded side. That's the side that's gonna go down. We're gonna get our fittings started in straight, this new block. And we're gonna try not to lose a ton of fluid. Now I'm gonna pre-wind my thing here because I don't wanna do a new clamp. It spun a little bit in there, but I find if you wind them up the opposite direction they're gonna thread, you can get it to thread in easier. So I'm not gonna tighten everything down just yet. I wanna make sure everything is started. These are hard lines, and you can bend them to line up a little bit because this block isn't exactly the same as the factory one. Now that we got our block kind of in with the breather hose, we'll tighten that one down maybe last. But we need to get these fittings lined up, and if we need to bend these lines, we need to know now. That one went right in by hand. We want movement in the block so it can line up. This other one's gonna fight us, but we are leaking. All of our brake fluid's coming out right now. So my goal is to get this all started. This driver one is a little cockeyed, but we're gonna see if we can't get it started. Hey, look at that. I think I got them both started pretty easily. This Jeep is so freaking clean that it's been really easy on a lot of the stuff that can fight you on some of those older Jeeps. So if you have an old rust bucket of a Jeep, I am sorry, please use Freeall. This is going together easier than it normally does on these old Jeeps, so I am very lucky with this Jeep. Okay, I'm just snugging that one up because as I tighten this, I don't want to be twisting and putting any tension on the hard lines until this one's tightened down. So now we're gonna tighten this guy. That's good and tight. We're still dripping. These are small little fittings, small little lines. We don't want to go crazy on them, but we do want to get them tight. That one feels good. It's so easy to strip these and to break these fittings. So now I got those tightened up. We're gonna wipe it all off and watch for more drips. If we have more fresh drips out of this line, we know we didn't get our brake lines tight enough. So you can always go tighter. It's very hard to undo a strip thread or strip block or a messed up fitting. And then we still need we're gonna tighten this guy up here. Okay, so this big guy is a 16 and we got our 11. Okay, so I got the brake lines as tight as I feel comfortable on these little tiny fittings. We're gonna watch for fresh drips. I'm gonna wipe everything down, and then especially when I'm bleeding the brakes, I'm gonna come back and check these. Now, for this guy, we might throw a little wire tie right here through the old hole because these are made with that C-clip for the XJs, the ZJs that have that bracket, but we'll come back and tie up all our lines at some point. But for now, we have all the tedious stuff done. We are to the best part of any install, in my opinion, and it's control arms. This is where you really start getting the axle where you need to be and everything starts coming together, especially when you go completely bare like we have. So we're gonna grab our rear arms. We're gonna get them all set to length. What I love about this kit, 3.5 inches, lengths are pretty straightforward. We might have a little tweaking, but on the lower control arms, we're doing 16 inches. On the uppers, this is where we might tweak a little bit. We're gonna go 14 inches, and then we'll see at the end of the video where our pinion sits at ride height after we settle everything. And if we have to come back in and tweak length, we will, but that's gonna get us pretty close. So let's grab the arms and get these puppies measured. And for the TJ, LJ, you can see all these, the lowers are exactly the same front and rear. We'll set a slightly different length for the front than the rear. Now, when you're doing your grease fittings, these are a self-tapping fitting. The holes are threaded, but to ensure a tight fit, we make them a little tight. It's not always gonna sit flush, which is totally fine. You just need grease fitting. You don't wanna be snapping them. All right, got our Zerk fittings in. We can set our lengths. Getting exactly to those lengths isn't as important as getting the control arms the same left to right. What's great about the uppers is this bushing sleeve is exactly 2 inches. So halfway, which is the center of our hole, puts us right at 1 inch. So we're not sitting here trying to guess where center is with that. So what you do is you put it on the end of the arm there, and this only works on the uppers. Subtract 1 inch to get our length. For 14, we have that right at 15. We're dead nuts on, exactly where we want to be. Technically 14 center to center if I move that over to center. Hopefully that makes sense. Just a little trick on the uppers. Now the lowers, they're going to be a little different. 16 on the lowers, 14 on the uppers. And to make sure we're exactly the same left to right, we're going to do the bolt trick. Grab our hardware kit. Got the uppers and the lower bolts. Adjust this out. Drop a bolt through that side. Then line up this side. And there we go. I think I want the grease fittings alternating. So on the upper rear, on the frame side, which is where we're putting the Johnny joints, we want the grease fitting down for access, but on the axle side, we want it up. Now you can put it down and put a 90 on it. We're gonna have to try to make sure our micrometer is a little closer than the uppers. So we're gonna stick this right in the middle and we're shade over 16. It's also important to make sure your Johnny joints are straight. Okay. All of our control arms are set. Let's get them bolted on the Jeep. This can be the harder part of the install because our axle is moved and shifted, but we know our lengths are good, at least close enough to get everything together. So we're gonna grab a little grease. We're always gonna pre-grease our poly. Our Johnny joints are already pre-greased, so you don't have to worry about that. We are gonna put our Johnny joints to the body. They can go either way. You can have the bushing at the body and the Johnny joint at the axle. We keep the Johnny joints to the body to keep them up out of the elements, the weather, the road rash. That's really the only reasoning. Your arms are gonna flex where they're gonna flex and move how they're gonna move, whether it's at the body or at the axle. There's no advantage or disadvantage. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's get over to the Jeep and get these guys installed. All it takes is a little on the outside to get you started, and then the grease will work in through the grease fitting. We're gonna move our axle. Oh my gosh, that was almost perfect. Let's do passenger. Okay, so I got the lower control arm here, and I wanted to talk a sec before we put it on about orientation. We get this question all the time, up or down. At lower lifts on the front, you can clearance the shock mount and give yourself some more room to run it up for better ground clearance. If you're bolting it in without doing any clearancing on the front, you need to run it down to give you that clearance around your shock mount, which overhangs your control arm, because you don't want to be flexing out and just banging against that and bending and limiting yourself. So that's what the bend is for. Now on the rear of the TJ, we can run it up for ground clearance. The Zerk fitting will still be able to access it either way from the back of the arm. I forgot to mention with grease, this is the Johnny joint grease. It is a moly-based grease. Any moly-based grease is gonna work really well on both the bushing and the Johnny joint. Avoid any of the red and tackies or the full synthetic lithiums. If you want the actual correct grease, we'll link it down below. I made the mistake of taking this whole thing apart. My other two jack stands are tied up, and I really need a jack stand under the pinion here because we need to rotate our axle. So I'm gonna get creative with a pry bar, I think. All right, let's see if we can get this pry bar to do the job. Oh yeah, that turned pretty good. Oh, that's nothing. Now, wish I had 7 hands. That's what happens when you work by yourself. Oops, I got it. Beautiful. You can see here, this is actually past our max droop. You can see the axle's shifted forward. We got tons of room. Our shock is actually gonna be a bit shorter than this. So we're at past max droop and we got plenty of clearance there. If you want, or if you have longer shocks you're gonna put on, you can notch this to give you more clearance around that mount. Or if you have aftermarket mounts, you have options to move it forward on the axle and give yourself more clearance. Let's get the other side on. Last control arm is going to be, it's usually always the hardest because your axle is all set for these 3. We're gonna have to do some maneuvering. We're gonna leave our lengths the same. You can be tempted to change lengths, but it's more important to move your vehicle up and down, shift the axle as much as you can, use leverage to match the same length. Then if you go and get an alignment and your thrust angle's off at all, then you know you have your frame or your brackets or your mounts are off, as long as you're the same length left to right, if that makes sense. We're only off half a bolt hole. Pry this over. Since we haven't tightened anything else on the Jeep yet, this actually is pretty easy. Trackbar should be the last thing you do. When the weight of the Jeep is back down, that'll help you get it over. All our arms are in. We're gonna get these torqued down. We're gonna go 140 foot-pounds on all the lowers, 55 to 60 on our upper control arms. The lower control arm jam nut is 250 foot-pounds and the upper is 200 foot-pounds. Sometimes it's hard to get your torque wrench in to tighten those down. You can always tighten those before you install. We didn't do that today because we're pretty open. We have the axle droop because we don't have shocks or anything on, but I recommend doing your jam nuts after you torque down the ends. Torquing suspension in the air like we are now is 100% okay as long as you don't have rubber bushings. Since we're replacing the factory rubber bushings with polyurethane on this end and the Johnny joint on this end, we're not gonna have the same issues that a rubber factory component will have. Now, if we have any rubber like we do in the front, right here, we have the factory rubber bushing. You can see this sleeve, this bolt sleeve, is fused. So if you torque it in the air with the whole suspension drooped down like this crush sleeve gets clamped in the U-bracket at whatever angle you are in the air. And then when you set it down, your suspension compresses, and then that sleeve has this huge preload on it because you torqued it in the air. What that does is that makes this bushing fail early. Now, the difference between that and a polyurethane is this sleeve is not fused, it's independent. It can move by itself. Same with the ball centers on the Johnny joints. Now, we're not gonna go ham on the jam nuts. We might need to do some adjusting, but we will get them tightened down. Okay, for the nut, it's a 22, and for the head of the bolt, it's a 21. Now we're gonna move on to the jam nuts on the lowers. We got the bolts done. 1 5/8 on the lower jam nut, 1.5 inches on the upper jam nut. These crow's feet are nice. We're gonna go as tight as we can. Our torque wrench goes up to 250, but sometimes it's hard to get there. If we have to adjust them, then it is what it is. The upper control arm bolts are 16 and 16, 55 foot-pounds. We're just gonna go in through this guy. If you don't have one of these, this is the best, like the best tool. I use it all the time. Call it a side impact. I don't know what it's actually called. Comment down below if you know the name for it. But we're gonna get these snugged down, and then we are going to torque everything down and move on. These are our Camp series, which is a single adjustable arm. This works great if you know your lengths or you can get close so you're not dropping the arm to adjust it. But if you think you're gonna have to do a lot of adjustment, I would opt for the Crawl series double adjustable, which just means it's threaded left and right-handed on all these arms, so you can adjust all 8 arms while they're installed on the Jeep. So if you don't know what lengths you're gonna be going to or what your lift height is exactly, or if you have some custom setup, go with the Crawl series, a double adjustable. The Camp series or the Crawl series normal in the lift kits is great because I'm giving you the lengths. We know where everything's gonna be, so our adjustment should be spot on. A little bit of tweaking is fine, but if you're moving it a lot, the Crawl series double adjustable is a great option. The kit does not come with new hardware. You do reuse your factory hardware on the shocks, but I did go and grab new hardware, but that's only because I threw all my old hardware away. So we're gonna grab our rear shocks and we're gonna get this puppy installed up there. Oh, where's that other bolt? Ah, there it is. Set it down, I dropped it. That's why the factory hardware is so freaking nice on these shock bolts, as they have that tip that lines everything up. Getting so mad. Ow, I hit my head. Finally got it. Shocks are done. Okay, we're on the home stretch. We're gonna put the sway bar end links in. On these ones, you will use the factory hardware. 18 mil going back in. 18 and 15 on the bottom side. I am debating whether or not to even attempt the rear track bar right now, since we can't put a lot of weight on it. We can get some ratchet straps to shift the axle if we need to, but really we're gonna be setting the track bar close to stock length, so we're gonna be off. We have the new bracket installed, but our axle is shifted, and I'm not a fan of using ratchet straps to move the axle back and forth, but that's probably what we're gonna do on this one. I'm gonna rearrange the jack stands. We're gonna have to do some adjustments at the end, but we'll see how close we are. I kind of just have it sitting up here right now. We're gonna turn the Johnny joint down, and we're not too far off. So let's see if we can't manhandle this a little bit. Okay, we're off quite a bit. First thing I'm gonna try is just putting some more weight down on it, but I wanna get a towel so this doesn't just sit right on the exhaust. Okay. That didn't move us at all because we really can't get a lot of the weight. Our other option is try to put some weight on this side. Getting some help. I went and got Corby. He is a big guy, so he's gonna help me. Corby's gonna pry against the side of the axle. Obviously, we're not really concerned about length. We're just trying to get this thing in because we're gonna do our final adjustments. Corby, see this thing right here? You can pry on that, you're gonna pull. We want the axle to come this way. Okay, Corby's ready. I'm gonna get the track bar up. Corby, go ahead and pry and see if you can. Yeah, he's moving it. You got more? A little more. There you go. We got it. I got the right guy to help me. Okay, we're done. That is it. Oh, thank you.
Of course.
All right, guys, that wraps it up for the rear end of this LJ. Now, I know I haven't tightened down the track bar. We're gonna leave it in there as is because we know we are off and we're gonna be adjusting it. I had to adjust it out a little bit just to get it in, but there's not much we can do besides ratchet straps until we get the weight of the Jeep down on the tires, and then we'll know where we're at on the axle and we can do our final adjustments. Come back next week. We're gonna be working on the front end. We'll get that all together. And then the last video, we're gonna be wrapping up with the beadlocks, bleeding the brakes, final adjustments. And remember guys, we're giving away 5 of these shirts. These are the LJ shirts. Like, comment, subscribe, make me laugh, tell me what I did wrong, tell me what you've done on your LJ. I wanna hear from you guys. I love doing this content and I love engaging with you, so let me know. Comment down below and you might get a shirt, and I'll catch you in the next one.